Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Chris Bedford will be with us from The Blaze. We'll talk to him about Speaker Mike Johnson, who's been in office for 7 months now in that role. Can you believe it? And how's he doing? Chris Bedford has some thoughts on that subject, and also on Joe Biden's destruction of everything you love. We'll talk to him about that, too. You can join us, 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. All the attention today is on Donald Trump's trial in New York, but maybe some attention should be paid to Hunter Biden's upcoming trial, his gun trial, his federal gun trial set for June 3rd. President Joe Biden made an unannounced, unexpected, middle-of-the-night visit to Hunter Biden's ex-girlfriend on Sunday evening. And what did they talk about? We don't actually know, but it sure seems a lot like witness tampering. Let's go to James Lynch now. He's a news writer for National Review and joins us on the phone. Hello, James.
Hi, Vince. Good to be back on the show.
So I want to remind people first and foremost about Hallie Biden. Hallie Biden is, the widow of the president's late son, Beau Biden. But for a time, she also dated Hunter after Beau had died, and is critical to this gun story, right?
Yes. So the situation with Hallie Biden, Beau Biden, and Hunter Biden is pretty messy. The Biden family matters are certainly going to be a big part of the gun trial. But she's an important person in the gun case because, she's going to establish that Hunter did come to Delaware around the time he purchased the gun. The prosecution has said she will testify about how Hallie and her kids found drugs and drug paraphernalia in Hunter's bags, even though he was saying at the time that he was trying to become sober. And then, after Hunter buys the gun, he freaks out, given the fact that Hunter was using drugs and they had a turbulent relationship. So she was the one who threw it into a trash can outside of a supermarket, where eventually law enforcement recovered the weapon and took it away from Hunter Biden. So she is an absolutely crucial witness for this upcoming gun trial, not only because of her involvement with the gun purchase itself, but because of her broader relationship with Hunter Biden from roughly 2016, after Beau Biden's sad and tragic death, to 2019, I believe, a few months after the gun incident took place.
You said Hallie Biden's Corey here, by the way. Thanks, James. You said Hallie Biden is a crucial witness, certainly a crucial witness to tamper with. When I first read this story, the immediate thing that popped into mind was when Bill Clinton met with Loretta Lynch, the former attorney general, on the tarmac. That was a week before Hillary Clinton was supposed to be interviewed by the FBI regarding her classified emails. They said they talked about grandkids and anything but the actual upcoming conversation with the FBI. Do you think that there could be a possibility that Joe Biden may have spoken to Hallie Biden about what she should possibly say when she's testifying in front of court?
I mean, the fact that it even is a possibility is not a good look for the White House at all. I think the Biden administration is saying, look, they were just talking about Beau and the anniversary of his death. But the optics of this visit, regardless of what they talked about, are not good because, as you're saying, it's a reasonable possibility that they could have discussed the trial. Yeah. And the reality is we simply won't know unless, presumably during cross-examination, the prosecution, or presumably during direct examination or cross-examination, the conversation is brought up. We'll just have to see because right now we don't really know.
Has the White House said anything about it? Have they made a statement or denied that any type of conversation took place?
Yeah, they denied that the trial came up, and they were saying that, Joe and Hallie were only talking about Beau's death. But the reality is that if the president comes knocking at your door when you're about to testify, I don't see how that doesn't come up or come to your mind at least.
Also, how would some White House comm staffer actually know the answer to that question? So if Joe Biden just goes into the house, he's got Secret Service posted up outside or whatever, and he goes and talks to Hallie, there's no comm staffer there listening. Oh no, they only talked about Beau Biden. They're either taking Joe at his word, which we've learned a long time ago is not a good thing to do, or they're making it up. They don't actually know what happened.
I'm not sure exactly how it would work. But presumably they would either be taking Joe at his word or just, kind of making that assertion as a form of damage control.
And the other thing that I've been thinking a lot about ever since I heard this story and saw your reporting on it was that, think about the way a president communicates. Most of their forms of communication are heavily monitored. Donald Trump used to complain about this. President Trump, he said, I can't do a phone call without having a dozen people listening in on every call. And for a variety of reasons, of course. You're talking to a foreign leader. They've got people listening in, people keeping notes, CIA, State Department, all these different interests that are focused on what do they need to be aware of as a part of that presidential communication. Fine. One of the only ways Joe Biden's going to even be able to communicate something as sensitive as this without having a million ears listening in is in person. So he has every incentive in the world to go and find Hallie and speak to her in person to kind of prep her for what he expects her to do on that witness stand.
Yeah, the Bidens don't necessarily have a history of being discreet. Even a few days before Joe visited Hallie Biden, Hunter was at a state dinner held by the Biden White House, and you could see pictures of him there, all dressed up and featuring very prominently. Attorney General Merrick Garland was also on the guest list only days before Special Counsel David Weiss, an appointee of Garland, is going to be prosecuting Hunter Biden at the gun trial. So the Bidens don't seem to be distancing themselves from Hunter at all, and they're not really exercising a lot of sound judgment here when it comes to the optics of this trial.
And I want to point out, the left, how they reacted when Speaker Mike Johnson showed up at the courthouse to stand in support of Donald Trump. The left's position was this is a gross violation of his office, that this is some sort of massive breach, that the Speaker of the House would dare use his important office to attack the justice system in the United States. Well, hold on a second. What you just described, James Lynch, is the President of the United States bringing a criminal defendant, his son, into the same room with the Attorney General who's prosecuting him so that they can party together, and then going to meet with Hallie Biden ahead of her testimony in that criminal defendant's trial. Joe Biden's fingerprints are all over interfering in the judicial process, and he's the President of the United States. And as always, there is a very selective outrage when it comes to who's allowed to say what about what judicial proceeding.
Yeah, and I think it's also, there's a selective outrage component when it comes to undermining the Justice Department. The president probably shouldn't be getting in the way in any form of the Justice Department's prosecution, much less one involving his son and Hallie Biden, who is his daughter-in-law, longtime family relative. So, look, the Biden administration and the president himself don't seem to be acting prudently when it comes to the optics surrounding this case.
James, I'd be curious, and I'm not sure if you even know the answer to this, but do you know what kind of relationship Joe Biden has with Hallie Biden at this moment? I mean, after Beau died, yes, she is the mother of his grandchildren. They had a rocky relationship with Hunter. It ended on bad terms. Does Joe Biden keep in touch with Hallie Biden often? Or if it's not so often, that would certainly raise more suspicions into the timing of this meeting.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how frequently they communicate, but Joe and his staff does seem to be in communication fairly regularly with Hunter. I've seen reports about Joe calling Hunter and seeing how he's doing. So it's not like Joe is putting any effort into potentially distancing himself and trying to completely separate himself from what's going on with the gun trial and with Hunter's tax trial.
I want to explore the specifics of the gun case, though, because obviously Hunter's got his own problems, and not all of them affect the American people. His drug usage, his gun purchases, his lying on background check forms. Those are really stories about Hunter's own indiscretions, and they really don't have a tremendous bearing on American voters, except to the extent that he's received any special treatment as a result of his father. And that includes this detail about the gun story, which I've never been able to get past, which is that the United States Secret Service, at a time when Joe Biden wasn't even vice president of the United States, apparently intervened in this effort to help clean up the gun crisis. Have we learned more since that detail first came out, James Lynch, about the role that the Secret Service has played in all of this and why they would be involved in Hunter Biden's affairs at all when his dad is not even vice president or later president of the United States yet?
Yeah, we haven't really learned much else about it. I would like to assume that the Secret Service part will come up when witnesses come forward during the trial to describe how the weapon was discarded and where the weapon went after Hunter was no longer possessing it, because the details of those 11 days are part of the criminal charges here, that Hunter was, allegedly possessing a firearm that he was holding while he was addicted to hard drugs. So I expect it to come up during the trial, but we don't really know that much about it. I think the prosecution will try to make sense of what actually went down. And Vince, you're also talking about the potential special treatment of Hunter Biden. We saw that in the failed guilty plea deal, which involved not only a misdemeanor plea for tax charges in Delaware, but a guilty plea for a single gun felony that Hunter would not have gone to jail for. He was supposed to sign a pretrial diversion agreement that would have conferred prosecutorial immunity for other alleged crimes that took place. So that's, the gun charges were kind of looped into this sweetheart deal that the DOJ and Hunter Biden had negotiated and were about to finalize until Judge Noreka, who's now on the trial, wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. She intercepted that thing. And that was all, that's a whole nother series of events that we've been exploring on the air, the role of a woman called Leslie Wolf in drafting that entire sweetheart deal, the same woman who the IRS whistleblowers accused of constantly getting in the way of investigating the Biden family and whatever criminal acts they may have committed. There's a mess here, and it all revolves around corruption within the Biden family and too few answers for journalists and American citizens alike.
Yeah, and a lot more of that information will be broadcast during the trial and during the proceedings when it comes to Hunter Biden's tax charges. The IRS whistleblowers did recently come forward with additional documents suggesting Hunter Biden potentially lied under oath about some of his Chinese business dealings. And one of the whistleblowers came forward with an accusation that the CIA had a classified briefing with Leslie Wolf and another DOJ official related to Hunter Biden's sugar daddy, Kevin Morris. After the classified briefing, according to the IRS whistleblower Gary Shapley, Leslie Wolf basically shut down any attempts to make Morris a central witness in the tax probe.
Yeah, claiming that it was the CIA who told her to stay away from him. It's so wild. All right, James Lynch over at National Review, thank you for putting all the pieces together for us each and every day. Really appreciate your reporting and your time today, sir. Back to the phones we go. Line 2 is Chris in Marshall, Virginia, the front line of the Heartland. Hello, Chris.
Right on. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call, and you stole my line. I love it. Listen, I've heard a lot of people contrasting Trump's speech in Bronx to Biden's commencement at Moorhead, and I've heard, Vince, you had me in tears yesterday when you played Trump's Memorial Day speech. It turned out, I think it was 2020 that actually aired.
Yeah, last year that he was president at Fort McHenry, he gave that speech.
Yes, sir, and I actually texted Corey just telling him I was bawling at that, and he said he wasn't in, and he said, what is it? And I told him, and people always contrast, the Trump speeches to the Biden speeches, but I want to broaden that challenge. I want to open it up to Biden's entire dismal, just miserable 78 years in elected office. Find me one patriotic, heartfelt, positive, uplifting speech that he's ever given, ever. Anything that compares to Trump's speeches of late. And Corey, I want to wish you a belated birthday. Humor me for 7 seconds. My brother-in-law wrote the very best birthday song, and I really think it's going to catch on, and here it is. Mm-hmm. This is your birthday song. It doesn't last that long.
Wow.
It was moving. Just like you were in tears yesterday. Thank you for
I loved it in a way. I loved it.
Thank you for that, Chris. I appreciate that. Wow.
It's got a je ne sais quoi to it. It's got a bit of appeal,
It does. Beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, well produced. Along those lines, his Memorial Day speech yesterday it was down, it was somber, he was falling asleep, but it didn't look like he even wanted to be there. I was there at Arlington Cemetery while Joe Biden was there. I was paying my respects. We spent a good 2 hours walking around the cemetery.
Did you know he was going to be there?
No, but the timing worked out well. We were walking, it was me and 4 other friends. We were walking in the path, and we saw Secret Service stopping people. I didn't see the motorcade, and then they eventually let us through, so we must have gotten through already. But I tell you, it's very anecdotal, but we were walking past a bunch of families who were upset and obviously paying their respects to their loved ones. We were at section 60, which is where a lot of the new graves are built, the Afghanistan veterans of 2021. I paid my respects to a few of them. And it was interesting. We were walking alongside a family. They all had TAP shirts on, Tragedy Assistance Program. So, they had a loved one, usually either their husband or father who was killed. And one of them asked for assistance. Could you give me a golf cart ride to section 60? We overheard this. And it was just an employee who said, no, I'm sorry, I can't help it. Help you. The president's here. And she actually lashed back out. I don't care about Joe Biden. You think I'm here for Joe Biden? My husband is here. Joe Biden can go to, and she actually said that. So the feeling I got there was that Joe Biden has left these people and these veterans behind. And boy, it was great to pay some respects yesterday.
Amazing. Just amazing. On Memorial Day. Speaking of the military and Joe Biden, new reporting now showing that pier, that publicity stunt pier that Joe Biden had assembled at Gaza, well, it's floating away. The details on that developing story coming up on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, top of the hour, Chris Bedford is here. From the Blaze, we'll talk to him about Speaker Mike Johnson, Joe Biden, and so much more. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I am joined today throughout the program by the excellent Corey Inganamort, the producer of this program, who's assisting me through my my under the weather nature today. I was like, Corey, let's do the show together. And so he's graciously agreed. So thank you for that, Corey. All right. The left has Robert De Niro. Crazy, man. Trump apparently has Dennis Quaid. Do you see this today? Piers Morgan interviewed Dennis Quaid on his television show, which I think the Piers Morgan thing, it's called Piers Morgan Uncensored. I'm pretty sure it airs across the Atlantic Ocean. They've got they do some distribution in jolly old England, and then they do some distribution here in the United States. I think Fox Nation. Anyway, it hardly matters. But Piers Morgan interviewed Dennis Quaid. This clip is now going viral, as the kids say. And here's Dennis Quaid. And he says at one point in this clip about Trump, he says, people might call him an a-hole, but he's my a-hole, he says, of Donald Trump. I'll stop it short of him using the profanity out loud.
What do you think of Trump?
I think I'm going to vote for him.
Really?
Yeah, in the next election. Yes, I am.
Are you ready for the blowback?
Well, yeah.
Which inevitably comes
well,
with Trump?
I think this election, everybody's got to, I think they're going to take a side or whatever, but it just seems to me, it just makes sense. I was ready not to vote for Trump until what I saw is more than politics. I see a weaponization of our justice system.
Yeah.
And a challenge to our Constitution, us as Americans, that I don't think we're going to have. And, Trump is the most investigated person probably in the history of the world. And they haven't been able to really get him. People might call him an ass.
Okay, I'll stop it there. So that's Dennis Quaid saying that he's the most investigated person in the history of the world, and I'm on his side, and I wasn't really on his side before, but that I saw what's happening to our Constitution and our justice system. So there's Dennis Quaid. He's a Hollywood guy, 10,000 times more eloquent than Robert De Niro, who's spitting all over a microphone in the middle of New York today about how Donald Trump is going to become a dictator for life, Corey.
There are some independent thinkers in Hollywood, apparently. He didn't get his marching orders from Robert De Niro. Good for Dennis Quaid. I guess he'll get some blowback from that. He won't be nominated for any more Academy Awards or any kind of recognitions on air anymore. But good for Dennis Quaid. There's a few actors and actresses coming out. The vote is obvious. It's not who Robert De Niro thinks. It's voting for Donald Trump. So good for Dennis Quaid.
And there's a certain type of celebrity, insofar as like these guys holding sway, that does come out and feel comfortable like this. And usually it's someone whose career is behind them. Dennis Quaid is an example of that, who's got, he's got enough success that if he's blackballed by whomever, he can endure it. He's got the money, that kind of thing. But it does take having, basically succeeded enough that you can take the hit if it comes. Yeah. And I'm looking at lately, I was like, seeing Tucker Carlson's been interviewing a lot of these guys, but you think about the people that are coming out of the woodwork and saying, actually, I'm kind of on Trump's side, like Aaron Rodgers and Danica Patrick
And that takes a lot more bravery. If you remember on The View a couple of weeks back, they had Robert De Niro on, and they praised him. They said, what you're doing is so brave. It takes a lot of bravery to come out and support Joe Biden right now. But it's actually the exact opposite. You're preaching to a room full of people who actually agree with you. When they all come on stage at the Oscars or Academy Awards, they're telling the audience exactly what they want to hear. There's nothing brave about it. Oh my gosh, Dennis Quaid, the opposite of Robert De Niro, actually takes some bravery.
Yeah, so he's going to take some arrows for that. Meanwhile, I wanted to tell people about what's going on in Gaza, specifically the American involvement there. There have been stories through the weekend of the components, the pieces of that pier that Biden ordered to be set up as a way to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza. Now, mind you, there are land channels for humanitarian aid to arrive in Gaza. The problem with humanitarian aid in Gaza is and always will be that Hamas steals it. When we send aid in, when Israel sends aid in, as they have for a long time, Hamas steals it. And so the reason that people are not getting it or they're being exploited is because of Hamas. So here's the update as of today. What a disaster. CNN reporting, the U.S. pier constructed off of Gaza has broken apart. The temporary pier constructed by the U.S. military to transport aid into Gaza broke apart and sustained damage in heavy seas on Tuesday, in a major blow to the American-led effort to create a maritime corridor for humanitarian supplies into the war-torn enclave, according to the Pentagon. The pier was damaged, and sections of the pier need rebuilding and repairing, Pentagon Deputy Press Secretary Sabrina Singh said on Tuesday. The pier will now be removed from its location on the Gaza coast over the next 48 hours and taken to the Israeli port of Ashdod, where U.S. Central Command will carry out repairs, Singh said. The repairs will take more than a week, further delaying the effort to get the maritime corridor fully operating. Earlier, 4 U.S. officials told CNN that the pier broke apart in heavy seas. Part of the pier, which consists of a narrow causeway to drive aid into Gaza and a wider parking area to drop off supplies transported by ship, disconnected on Sunday, the official said. The parking area will have to be reconnected to the causeway before the pier can be used again. This is amazing. So what we have now is we moved heaven and earth to get this stuff over to Gaza. The cost, according to the Biden administration, so you can be sure that it's an underestimate for the actual cost, so far has been $320 million, which, we hear so many government headlines and you think, oh, at least it's not $1 billion. The billion is, but $320 million. And now the thing is washing away into the ocean. Talk about a Joe Biden project if you've ever heard of one.
And this project was doomed from the very, very start. It's another example of Joe Biden funding both sides of the war. We try to help Israel in their war against Hamas, the terrorist organization. But this was doomed from the very, very start. They wanted to put a pier out there on the water so that they could claim that there were no troops on the ground. We're not sending any troops to the ground, but we're sending troops in harm's way in a pier just off the ground, in range of both rockets and gunfire, and somehow this is some good compromise that keeps Americans safe. It was doomed from the very, very start. We all know that aid doesn't actually get to the civilians of Gaza because Hamas doesn't allow it to.
And so much for keeping the soldiers out of Gaza. Here's another piece of this story that probably deserves more attention than the pier itself blowing apart. The Pentagon said Monday that U.S. soldiers are now stuck on 3 army boats beached in Gaza after storms broke apart the aid pier that the service built to deliver food to starving Palestinians. Pentagon spokeswoman Sabrina Singh told reporters that only one of 4 army boats that lost power on the high seas over the weekend has been recovered. She also said that soldiers are still on the 3 boats that are beached in Gaza and awaiting recovery. The Israeli Navy will be helping push those vessels back, and hopefully they'll be fully operational, Singh said, noting that one ship should be recovered in the next day and the other due in the next 48 hours. In addition to the storms beaching the 4 boats that were holding the aid pier in place, I'm quoting from the Military Times here, Singh confirmed that a portion of the Trident Pier, separated from the pier that is currently anchored into the coast of Gaza, and the Trident Pier was damaged. So now we have troops in harm's way, guys who are beached aboard these naval vessels. And once again, this was all a publicity stunt. These guys should have never been over there. This pier should have never been built. Humanitarian aid has been routinely sent into Gaza by way of the land channels, and it's Hamas that is the cause of all of the chaos. And I'm praying that they don't lead to more, especially against American troops.
And the only way we're even knowing anything about this to begin with is because of independent reporters who are on the ground in Gaza. I see a video on Twitter circling around of this pier just floating away off into the distance, into the sea. And the person who originally posted this said, look, the Gaza pier is floating away. They got community noted saying that this is false information. It's not actually real. So this video kept going around on the internet, circulated, retweeted, got a whole bunch of views. So finally, the White House needs to respond to it. They would have kept this hush-hush if it weren't for independent reporters. Now the AP is confirming that, yes, all aid deliveries are suspended after rough seas after damage to a U.S.-built temporary pier in Gaza. That's according to 3 U.S. officials. So they're confirming the reports are true. They didn't want it to get out, but thanks to independent reporting and Elon Musk not censoring this reporting, the American people finally know that their $320 million of taxpayer-funded money is being absolutely wasted. And that's just the update to the story. Last week, we heard the Pentagon confirming that aid wasn't even getting to the civilians to begin with. So no aid wasn't getting there, and now the pier is destroyed. Ships are stranded at sea in harm's way, and we're just supposed to be okay with that because, what, Joe Biden needs to win Dearborn, Michigan?
Exactly right. And that's the thing. All of this is just political. Insofar as it's designed to convince small subsections of American voters to keep Biden in office inside of these swing states. Michigan is an example of that. And we get even more bizarre headlines to that end, as we see this week that the Biden administration is begging the world to go easy on Iran's nuclear program because Biden's administration is fearful that if they tick off Iran, that it may hurt Biden's reelection chances. So the Iranians are barreling towards, the Iranian regime is barreling towards nuclear arms right now. According to everybody who pays any attention whatsoever to what Iran is up to, they are this close to being able to launch nuclear warheads. And the Biden administration is telling European allies, according to the Wall Street Journal this week, to, quote, back off of plans to rebuke Iran for advances in its nuclear program as it seeks to keep tensions with Tehran from escalating before the autumn's U.S. presidential election, according to diplomats involved in discussions. So here you have Biden yet again, or at least the people around him, the string pullers around him, who are dictating the worst possible decisions in American foreign policy in order to safeguard his reelection outcome. That's what this is. The U.S. is arguing against an effort by both Britain and France to censure Iran at the International Atomic Energy Agency's member state board in early June. The U.S. has pressed a number of other countries to abstain in a censure vote, saying that is what Washington will do. And they're super concerned that this is going to upset the election. And that, is unfortunately also consistent with the fact that Biden's been withholding Israeli weapon deliveries because he's convinced that will also help him get reelected. So if he's only animated by that particular thing, he's not animated by successful outcomes here. It's not about what's wise foreign policy for the United States at all. It's entirely about how do I appeal to the most radical elements of my base.
Yep. It's not about keeping Americans alive. It's about him keeping power. And at the end of the day, that summarizes Joe Biden's presidency. And we see Bill Maloogian interviewing illegal aliens crossing the borders. Some of them are from Iran. They're not even from Mexico anymore. They're from Iran. And how did you get here? Oh, well, because, the border's wide open. So another example of Joe Biden not caring about keeping Americans safe. He's keeping his power.
Yeah, and we have Jordanian illegals trying to break into U.S. military bases here in America, and nothing. Crickets out of the White House.
I did see that Dog the Bounty Hunter is getting involved. Did you see that, Vince? Dog the Bounty Hunter says he's going to track down illegal aliens who have been previously jailed in other countries. So I'm looking forward to that show coming up soon.
At this rate, it's not going to be that hard to find them. You don't need Dog the Bounty Hunter's expertise to find somebody who's a criminal from another country who's snuck into ours. They're everywhere now, thanks to Biden. All right, 4:49 now.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for keeping it real, brother.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, I just want to speak to you from 25 years in law enforcement about something so rare. The completely biased decision by Judge Merchant to allow the unsequestered jury spend a week in public with biased family and biased coworkers providing their opinion on such a high-profile case. And, oh, by the way, in a city where you can't go 10 feet without seeing or hearing CNN, MSNBC News in the streets. And by the way, why is Biden going to speak after the trial? To defend his biased DOJ? And one more thing, Vince. I'll bet you on FanDuel they sent De Niro to New York City to speak on the Dems' behalf.
They sent De Niro. Well, they did, because De Niro was doing it on the part of the Biden campaign, like literally.
That's right. But why would you not sequester a jury on such a high-profile case?
It is weird, isn't it? I mean, there's all sorts of features of this case that are so totally corrupt. Also, apparently, based on New York,
wasn't the OJ jury sequestered?
Yeah, if I recall correctly, they were. But in this case, like, for instance, like, one of the things that came up today was like, why is it that the defense has to go first in the closing arguments? And apparently, that's a product of New York state law, I guess. That was what I found today. But it does seem unusual, because you think usually the defense goes second so that they can leave the final impression in the minds of the jury about the way to think about this case. And that's not happening today. So there's all sorts of things in this that just seem like complete nonsense.
There's all sorts of crazy things that are seen to set up the Trump defense for failure.
Yeah, and especially that judge. Thank you, Robert. A lot of good insights.
Thank you.
Corey, as we've gone through this process, this entire story, it never seems like there's a single moment that's like, oh, that's breaking Trump's way, the way that the trial's being administered, at least.
Never. And to his point, an unsequestered jury. Now they walk out on the streets and they see the Biden campaign. Oh, well, hey, I may have voted for you in 2020. I might want to listen to you a little bit further. What do you have to say? How should I vote on this juror? And to his other question, what's Joe Biden going to do when he addresses the nation after the verdict comes down on Donald Trump? Well, he's either going to take a victory lap and say, well, look, my opponent is a criminal. He's not going to mention how all the jurors are leftists and it's been an unfair prosecution. He might even say, well, look, he's a convicted felon. I'm not going to debate him anymore. Why should I give a convicted felon a debate stage? And if he's not convicted, well, he's like, well, look how great our justice system is. Everybody's got a fair shot, even my political opponent. So
yeah, he's going to come out. He's going to pretend like they had no hand in trying to throw him in prison. Meanwhile, the Secret Service has literally been the Biden administration, and their Secret Service has been negotiating with the local prisons in New York about how to imprison Trump, what it will take, just in case you're wondering what they're thinking about. And by the way, the OJ jury was sequestered for more than 8 months back in 1995. They were closely guarded inside of the hotel that they were sequestered in. Not so in this high-profile Trump saga. Stay with us. Chris Bedford, minutes away.